Okay, now we're on to chapter 16. So Holden leaves Grand Central Station, and sorry, Sugar wants to get in the picture. And then he is walking along the street, and he buys Phoebe a record. He wants to go and buy her a record called Little Shirley Beans. And the reason that he likes the record so much is because of the woman that sings it. She sings it really Dixieland and kind of raunchy. And Holden likes that it's not cutesy or mushy, the song. But he likes the words to the song too and thinks that Phoebe will like it. And so he buys her a record. And then he's walking along the street and he hears a little boy singing If a Body, Catch a Body coming through the rye. And he's kind of a little wandered off from his parents. He's just kind of doing his own thing and not really paying attention, and they're not really paying attention to him. And so Holden thinks that's really cool. He says he had a pretty little voice too. He was just singing for the hell of it. You could tell. The cars zoomed by, brakes screeched all over the place. His parents paid no attention to him, and he kept on walking next to the curb and singing, If a Body, Catch a Body coming through the rye. It made me feel better. It made me feel not so depressed anymore. So something about the innocence of that moment Holden understands and really enjoys. So, and that's, of course, going to lead us in a bit to the title of the title of the book. So he's going through, after that happens, then he has to go buy the tickets for the play for he and Sally to go to. So he does that. And then he is in Central Park, and he wonders if Phoebe is there. It's Sunday. Sometimes she goes roller skating on Sunday in the park. So he doesn't see her, but he sees a girl about her age. He asks the girl, hey, do you know my sister? Have you seen her? And the girl mentions that she might be in the Natural History Museum. And so Holden wanders into the Natural History Museum, and he goes on and kind of explaining the Natural History Museum. But the most telling part of it for us, the reader, about Holden is over on page 121 when he says, the best thing, though, in that museum was that everything always stayed right where it was. Nobody'd move. And then he said, nobody'd be different. The only thing that would be different would be you. Not that you'd be so much older or anything. It wouldn't be that exactly. You'd just be different, that's all. So he likes that things stay the same. They seem easier to control. And we get the feeling now that as things are changing and constantly happening to him, that it feels like he's out of control. Chapter 16 ends with Holden leaving the Natural History Museum, putting on that hat of his. I took out my old hunting hat out of my pocket while I walked and put it on. And then he goes and leaves there and kind of muses a little bit about Sally and Phoebe at the end of the chapter. And that's chapter 16. Okay, so chapter 17. And if I was going to title this chapter, it would be The Date with Sally, because the whole chapter is about what happens on the date with Sally. So it starts out that he goes to get her and sees her coming up the steps. He's a little excited in the beginning, even though he kind of wishes he'd never made the date, he says, before this all gets going. But she starts off about the play. They go see the play, and then it's all about George something, who they run into, who Holden thinks is a big phony, and the Luntz, who Holden thinks are big phonies, are in the play. And just, it's very, Sally's very superficial. She's very much about, what she wears and who she knows and that kind of thing, and it shows up in this chapter. Even when she kind of begs Holden to go ice skating, the reason that she wants to go is because she wants to wear one of the little skating skirts and look cute. So this whole thing is just, really kind of getting to Holden. And he finally kind of confesses about what he really wants to do. So he says, look, I said, here's my idea. How would you like to get the hell out of here? Here's my idea. I know this guy down in Greenwich Village. We can borrow his car for a couple of weeks. He used to go to the same school I did, and he still owes me $10. What we could do is tomorrow morning, we could drive up to Massachusetts and Vermont and all around there. See, it's beautiful as hell up there. It really is. I was getting excited as hell the more I thought of it, and I sort of reached over and took old Sally's goddamn hand. What a goddamn fool I was. No kidding, I said. I have about $180 in the bank. I can take it out when it opens in the morning, and then I can go down and get this guy's car. No kidding. We'll stay in these cabin camps and stuff like that till the dough runs out. Then when the dough runs out, I could get a job somewhere, and we could live somewhere with a brook and all. And later we could get married or something. I could chop all our own wood in the wintertime and all. Honest to God, we could have a terrific time. What do you say? Come on, what do you say? Will you do it with me, please? So Holden wants to drop out of society, much like Salinger actually did. And so, this idea does not sound good to Sally, who is very much part of New York and the theater and the arts and all of that. And so she kind of thinks he's nuts a little bit. And in response to that, Holden says, "Come on, let's get out of here." I said, "You give me a royal pain in the ass if you want to know the truth." Well, this completely offends Sally. She's going to leave without him, and he, thinks he should be apologizing, does apologize, but, he's happy to let her go. He says, "If you want to know the truth, I don't even know where all that stuff started. I mean, about going off somewhere to Massachusetts and Vermont and all. I probably wouldn't have taken her if she'd wanted to go with me. She wouldn't have been anybody to go with. The terrible part, though, is that I meant it when I asked her. That's the terrible part. I swear to God, I'm a madman." So, and there ends chapter 17. Okay, last chapter, and then we're going to start reading aloud a little bit today. This is chapter 18. And at the beginning of the chapter, he starts to think about Jane again. And he starts to think about Jane with another guy that she went to a dance with once. And basically, Holden surmises that she made kind of excuses for him because this guy was kind of a jerk. She said he had an inferiority complex. So he hates when women kind of make excuses for men that are not very nice guys. He thinks about her to the point where he calls her, but nobody answers, and so nothing happens there. And then he calls Carl Luce, a guy that he knew at Wooten School, one of the schools he's been kicked out of, and who is very intelligent. So he wants someone smart to talk to. We get the feeling that he's getting lonely, he's feeling bored. I mean, he even took Sally Hayes out in the last chapter, which probably not somebody that he's really compatible with. So, he and Luce make arrangements to meet for drinks at 10 o'clock that night, although there's still a lot of time in the day, in the evening, I should say. We're now in the evening of the second day. So he goes to a show at Radio City Music Hall. He sees the Rockettes. It's a Christmas show. It's all very sparkly and superficial, and Holden hates it. And then after the Rockette show, there is a movie at Radio City, and basically it's about war, and then he kind of muses about being in the military. He says, "My brother DB was in the Army for 4 goddamn years. He was in the war too. He landed on D-Day and all, but I really think he hated the Army worse than the war. I was practically a child at the time, but I remember when he used to come home on furlough and all he did was lie on his bed practically. He hardly ever even came in the living room. So he knows the effect that war has. It had an effect on DB. And then he said he once told Allie and I that if he'd shoot anybody, he wouldn't have known which direction to shoot in. He said the Army was practically as full of bastards as the Nazis were." So, and what the military really represented, especially to Holden, is that idea of conformity. And that was not something he or DB or Allie were about. But that's kind of how he ends. There's a few allusions, those references to things in literature or history, at the end of this chapter to The Great Gatsby and to Farewell to Arms, to kind of classic pieces of American literature. And then that's pretty much it for chapter 18. And that's where we'll pick up. All right?